Hey guys, welcome into the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack. He's Frank. I'm back, baby. I'm back. The kid sleeps 2 hours in the crib. Boom.
Fuck yes.
Ready to rock and roll. Ready
Fuck
to fucking
yes.
rock and roll. Get back to this podcast a little bit more. You know what? I decided to take a little off season for myself. You know, I'm sick, Frank. I'm sick fucking hearing about Justin Fields and Caleb Williams at this point. I'm sure a lot of our listeners probably are as well. But no, we got some other things we wanted to discuss, and of course, you know, I wanted to, as you know, I've been away from this podcast for a little bit, so I do want to share my thoughts on the situation, kind of where I stand, plant my flag, and you know what, Nas isn't here to say shit. All right,
That's true.
I'm going to talk about how Justin Fields is the greatest quarterback of all time, and he can't stop me. He's not here to stop me.
That's
not his fault.
Bad man's not here to give us advanced stats.
Him and his fucking stats to prove his points.
Yeah,
like,
him and his fucking EPA per play, this bullshit.
Yeah.
Fields is the GOAT, baby. He's coming back.
And I'm here to use my gut and my eyes like a true Bears fan.
Yeah,
and we need to go back to the 46 defense.
Yep. Let's run the ball, 3 downs.
Bring back Jordan Howard. He's still out there, right?
30 carries a game.
You know what's crazy? I saw something, not to get on a tangent, but I saw something where it was Todd Gurley is like 2 years younger or something like that than Derrick Henry. And Todd Gurley hasn't played in like 8 years.
I saw that too. He may have had the shortest prime of any NFL player ever.
Prime.
Well, yeah, I mean, he win
super productive.
It was like a 3-year stretch. He won an MVP. Was it? Maybe you're right. Either or. He had a monster season one of those years. Because his rookie year, he was bad. And then he came back just sort of from the dead and was fucking phenomenal.
Right. And then he lost his knees and...
Yeah, he went to Atlanta and that was it.
Wild. And that's why Frank hates running backs. Don't, you know, just if anyone asks, that's why.
Maybe that was the start of me hating running backs, yeah.
Yeah.
Him or Le'Veon.
Did you have him in a dynasty league? Like, is he the one
that
burned you?
No. I caught him cheap. I caught him real cheap. I gave him like a 3rd round flyer when he was a Falcon. Didn't really burn me.
Okay. All right. We should do a podcast one day about dynasty players that have burned us.
We should. That'd be very fun.
I've got a few.
We all have. If you haven't, you're not doing dynasty right. This is what it is.
Right. And then you hit when you hit on one, right?
Oh,
like Puka.
You never let him forget it.
No, to this day. You mean you didn't know that this 5th round rookie was gonna break all time records? Fucking idiots.
Exactly.
Frankie, we had a trade. The Bears had a trade. A lot of social media outlets that posted about the trade had to very clearly in their tweets make sure everyone was aware it's not about Justin Fields. But I think it was an important trade nonetheless. The Bears have traded a 2024 5th round pick for one Ryan Bates. And if that name sounds familiar to you Bears fans, to your Bear With Us podcast, Bears fans, he's a name that we actually talked about a few years ago, a couple of years ago when the Bears tried to sign him to a restricted free agent contract. The Bills ultimately matched it, and it net them a 5th round pick. So, you know, Frankie, I like the trade for depth purposes. He didn't start at all last year. He barely played last year. So a little curious on that. But yeah, I mean, solid player, solid depth piece. Look, from what I've seen, he can play kind of all 5 positions. He's a good size for center. A little, just long enough to play tackle, so can kind of move around a little bit, which I really do like. Obviously, Ryan Poles has been targeting him, so he clearly sees something that he does like. And ultimately, I think for, you know, some other positional flaws we've seen from Ryan Poles, maybe in scouting department, offensive line obviously seems to be a plus for him. He seems to find some good productive players. I would say he probably hits on more than he misses. I like the trade. I'm curious how you feel about the player, you know, him not starting last year, him kind of not really playing, but also the compensation aspect. Was it too much? Do you feel like it was just kind of like a cheap trade? Like, do you not care? How do you feel about it overall?
Overall, I feel good. I'll start there. The interior offensive line was in severe need of help. Me and Naz have spoke about that ad nauseum at this point. Before you took your summer break, we spoke about how weak we feel like those positions.
Not even summer yet.
It was your
That's
summer.
The worst part.
I know it was your summer. But we spoke about how weak that position was. So we knew that this was going to be attacked somehow, some way. I hate to be that dude. It's always hindsight with some of these trades. Ryan Poles is either going to look like a genius or he's going to look like an idiot for giving up a fifth for a guy who barely started. I think the only weird thing is it's not the weird thing to me isn't the fact that he did not get much playing time last year with the Bills. All honesty, Jackie, why the fuck did you all match the contract if you guys weren't going to play him? That was sort of the weird part. Is because he's talented. Right. He was talented enough for you to match the contract. Now I don't know.
He's only 27.
Yeah, he's
still young. It's not like he's like a 30-plus-year-old guard or anything like that. Like he's still
exactly
a young player.
So the plus side to me is the versatility that you mentioned. They're in dire need of that because to me this can either be the backup plan that you got early at center because you struck out everywhere else, or he's just a depth guy that because we know Jenkins probably can't play 17 games. We have no idea what we're getting out of Davis at right guard. You can always use swing tackles. That's always in demand. Right. So this is a Swiss Army knife in which we needed. My only take that I have here though, Jack, is the reason why I really, really like it is because Ryan Poles isn't going to allow what other teams think about a player to determine what he thinks about a player. We know that he signed with the Bears last offseason, and it was just matched. So it was what it was, but he signed an offer sheet from the Bears. Ryan Poles clearly evaluated him, liked what he saw, and continued to keep tabs on him. To me, when I think about the way that a GM does things long term, that's brilliant to me, Jack, because how many, and maybe it doesn't work every single time, but we do know that if a situation doesn't work out at a player for a player that got drafted elsewhere, that this to me just shows that Ryan Poles is keeping notes, that him and his scouts, they still are keeping tabs on guys around the league. So again, the way it's going to be hindsight, because we maybe put like, why the fuck, if he's Lucas Patrick 2.0, we're going to be upset about it, of course. But as it stands right now, this can only be a positive thing to me. He's getting ahead of a problem. He's trusting his own scouting and saying, hey, you didn't play him, you guys didn't like him, whatever. I know what I saw in this film, and he fits what we want to do. So I'm excited about it. I think, interior depth is what we needed, and he got it early.
Yeah, I think you said it all right there. I do think from the trade, the draft pick capital aspect to it, I think it is starting to open up some questions, because I think one of the things that we criticized Ryan Pace for a lot was never really having enough draft picks, trading up, trading picks, not seeing the value in them. I'm not as concerned about that because it's day 3. I think I'd rather have a veteran that Ryan Poles clearly targeted, because again, I do trust him currently with his scouting of offensive line, where it's like, would I rather have a 5th-round rookie who may or may not make the team versus someone who you can plug and play at positions with those question marks that you just brought up at left guard, at right guard, maybe even left tackle a little bit, but obviously center is a big one as well. So there are a lot of holes on this offensive line, and I feel like this trade sort of does a lot to solidify that. So I like it from that aspect. I don't love that they're down another pick, but again, I think when you kind of keep it in frame of mind, I think it's overall a fine, solid trade. It's just nice to be able to talk about something else in regards to the quarterbacks. Speaking of something else to talk about, Jaylon Johnson was officially tagged today by the team, franchise tag. They were not able to come to an agreement on an extension before the tag deadline, so the Bears did that, buy themselves a little more time. Frankie, I don't love this. And Naz, you're just going to have to sit here and listen to it all over again. But I want to make my point very clear. I'm not upset that they tagged him, of course. I keep him. I've been on that train. Do not create another hole on your roster when this is at the prime position that you've invested so much capital into already. Your defensive backs. He's clearly your best player on the defensive back front. He is a proven veteran. He bet on himself, played extremely well at times. I would say, there was a little inconsistency that popped up, but obviously way more good than bad for Jaylon Johnson this past season. I don't love that they weren't able to come to a contract extension, because while on this podcast, you and I have praised Ryan Poles repeatedly for him sticking to his value. He's not going to overpay guys. We saw that in free agency. He's not going to give in to player demands, things like that. While I like that philosophy for the most part, I do think there are exceptions to the rule. And when you're talking with your super talented players, guys who are respected in the locker room, leaders of that locker room, he's bought into this defense. He was not drafted by Ryan Poles, wasn't scouted by Matt Eberflus, but Jaylon Johnson really bought into the system and has played extremely well. And I think when it comes to a player like that, you should have a little more wiggle room to go past what you may feel comfortable with in terms of value, because it is more than just the player aspect. There is that leadership, the quality, and building up guys thinking about their future. Am I going to get a second contract? Is Jaylon Johnson doesn't, what is the likelihood I'm going to? I don't like the precedent set. I'm not saying a deal won't get done. I just don't love that it hasn't gotten done yet.
I'm right there with you. I was willing to bet a substantial amount of money that he would not be tagged and that they would be working out a deal. Where I started to feel a little less sure of that was at the combine day one when Ryan Poles is talking, and he's dude. I gotta sometimes separate what I feel about him in certain situations, because he's such a fucking master negotiator. When he started talking about we sent in our best deal and we're very confident we're gonna get it, that was him publicly negotiating without him.
Right.
Like, he was doing it. He was doing the thing.
Right.
And it was fucking brilliant. But I knew, I was like, there's no way. He's getting, like, right then, I was, maybe not say it was no way, but I was like, they're not gonna like this. His agents are not gonna like this. They're gonna, stick to their guns a little bit more, because, but I do think they'll ultimately come to an agreement. But I agree with you. I think where I'm at with Poles is I respect the fuck out of that philosophy, because he's right. That is how you build long-term success. You don't build long-term success by adding to a top 5 defense and adding Julius Peppers and adding fucking Jared Allen at a way too high of a price. Like, we've seen bad contracts in the city before. So he's right there. But I'm there with you, and I was I don't remember what the scope of the conversation was, but I was literally just telling Nas this. We're going to hit a point where we're a piece or two away, and he's going to have to be comfortable with overpaying, whether it's free agency or his own guys. Now, I don't know if we're at that stage just yet, but I do think we're at the stage right now where the culture has been built so well, you can't set the precedent. The locker room ate Roquan leaving. I think the fans, for the most part, were okay with it. There was a lot of, he ruffled some feathers. He was a little weird on the back end of things. Same thing with Robert Quinn. I mean, just some leaders of the clubhouse that got traded. Clubhouse ate that. They continued to build this thing. Now it's the time to start paying the farm. You have to, right. Especially because it's not like you gave Cole Kmet an extension, and it's no offense to Cole Kmet. Exactly. I think he's a good player. Jaylon Johnson had an elite year last year. Like, Cole Kmet is a nice piece to have. It's not he's not bad. He's not great.
What he's worth.
Yeah, exactly. But like, Jaylon is more than that, and I'm right on board with you. Is you have to you have to pay him. Unless he's asking for like an egregious contract, which it didn't sound like he is. He's been in public saying, like, I'm not looking to necessarily reset the value, but I know my worth and I want my market value. Cool. I'm down for that, because he proved himself year in and year out. So I'm right there with you. If he has to go a little bit over what he's comfortable with, you got to do it. You can't let this guy go, because it's not like you've drafted so many corners that if we can get Jaylon on the hometown discount, great. If not, sayonara. You're just creating another hole now. What do we get, another second round corner when we trade Justin? Like, what do we do? Like, you're just creating another hole on a defense that doesn't need that. Like, it's almost complete.
Yep, exactly. You're making your life harder.
Yeah,
you're making their life harder. Just get the deal done. I still think it will. In this situation, I don't love that process, which I know we've talked about in the past, liking Ryan Poles. So I think him sticking to his gun. So I do think it's good for us to sort of point out when that strategy does have its negatives. Speaking of strategy, I have not been on this podcast for quite some time. So Frank thought it was prudent for me to talk Caleb Williams versus Justin Fields. I'm not going to get super long-winded. I think you and Nas have done an excellent job breaking down why they should go one way versus the other. I am all in favor of drafting Caleb Williams number 1 overall. I think you just, I think it's such a weird prospect because like he was built up as like the obvious number 1, Caleb Williams, no duh, he's that dude, and then people just, I don't know if it's just like they like Justin Fields so much that they just like had to tear him down. It's been a weird process. Am I sad that Justin Fields will no longer be a Chicago Bear? Absolutely. I was, you know how excited I was, Frank. You remember that podcast we did when we first, got drafted him? Like we were so stoked.
It was our first emergency podcast ever.
Yeah, he was going to be the future of the Bears quarterback position, and I still think it's possible. And I think that's why a lot of fans are kind of on this, have this debate, where it's just like, what if Justin gets a better offensive coordinator, finally unlocks him, dual threat, MVP caliber season, blah, 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 blah. I just, the obvious is there. This was why you made the trade for the first pick last year, to put yourself in a position where if something doesn't work out, you can hopefully get a top pick to maybe draft a quarterback. Now, I don't think you or I really thought that maybe the number 1 pick would be in play again, but it is. That's the reality of the situation. It makes sense money-wise. It makes sense development-wise. It makes sense from a prospect-wise. I'm not as concerned as other people are about the locker room fracturing because Justin Fields gets traded. I think they all understand. DJ Moore is already kind of walking back a little bit and being like, look, Justin's my guy. And I hope Caleb, if he does get drafted, which I think he will, like 99% sure that's happening. I hope Caleb looks at that and sees DJ Moore just fighting for his guy. And it sounds like Caleb Williams does sort of understand that. He's not this terrible, horrible human being that he's been made out to be. I know people have been going off about his dad. And, at first, when I heard that his dad was super involved, I full disclosure, thought the same thing. It's going to be like another LeVar Ball type situation. He's going to be this dude. He's going to be in the media, blah, blah. From what I've seen, his dad really isn't like that. He's just a dad looking out for his kid, and he wants to be involved. From my understanding, doesn't sound like it's ever been a problem wherever he's gone. Sounds like he did his due diligence in selecting where he wanted his son to go play college football. Obviously, that paid off. NIL money obviously coming through. I'm not as concerned about that. I just think the Bears, and I loved his question of, do you want to win? And I think the Bears should take a look inward and ask themselves if they want to win. And I think based off of things that they've done last year, I would say yes. Trading a 2nd-round pick for a defensive end and then immediately paying that guy because he's good. Trading for DJ Moore. They went out that now they have to improve this roster. Let's not pretend Caleb Williams is going to solve all the problems. But they are in a position to do something special. And I think Caleb Williams is that final piece to really make this thing special, as opposed to, well, maybe with Justin, they could compete for the fifth, 4th seed, something like that. Like Caleb Williams puts them on a track to compete for the division. Take the North.
Yep.
Never give it back.
Yeah, I think it's the more I sat with it, it was very hard for me because I don't watch college football. It was very hard for me to even fathom moving off of Fields because I still think we saw progress. Like there was still, he had his ups and downs. He still needs to be consistent. But I was like, man, like even with, you saw like there still weren't enough weapons around him. And I feel this way about Caleb. When they draft Caleb, I want him to get more weapons. So it doesn't matter the quarterback. I'm sick of this nonsense of, like the greats lift everyone up. Dude, in what lifetime? Because Peyton Manning had an awesome wide receiving core most of the time. He had some shaky ones too. We saw fucking magic when Tom Brady and Randy Moss had those 2 years together. Pat Mahomes now is sort of bucking that trend. He's been fucking insane, but look at what he did with Tyreek. He obviously has one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Drew Brees, maybe not the greatest, but Marquise Colston was very good. Michael Thomas, like these guys, Jimmy Graham, you get these guys weapons, and like the running game was always good in New Orleans. Like you get these dudes weapons. But the ultimate point, I think too, for me that made me really, I watched more film of Caleb. So really 3 that I'm thinking about it. And it really doesn't impress me, the off schedule stuff. The arm angles and that is impressive. But what I really look for now in a quarterback, the more I've scouted, the more I've understood what the Bears have gone through and what we've seen, is I need to see what you can do in structure as well. Because we saw Zach Wilson do off structure things, and that's why I wasn't all that impressed with him. Because when I saw that within the flow of the offense, it was like, that's awful. It just wasn't good.
Right.
And when I started really breaking down tape and seeing other people break down what, I was like, dude, this dude's, the background, the backyard football type of shit, and then also the in structure, like on time throws and the anticipation and the accuracy. It's like, oh, this dude, this is why he's talked about this way. So there's that portion of it. I think he's already more advanced within the flow of an offense, like on time type of quarterback than Justin is. But then on the flip side, I still do believe this of Justin Fields. Whether it's here, whether it's elsewhere, you get him weapons, you get him an actual offensive system, I think he can be very good. But as it stands right now, whether you're the biggest Justin Fields guy or you're the biggest Justin Fields doubter, I think the rational person still looks at him and says, we still don't know. Unfortunately, we just don't know. Now, again, we've broken this down. I don't think a lot of that it's on him. I think it's more situation than it is him. But realistically, he hasn't really improved. So we don't know if he's that guy. So unfortunately, if you're going into year 4 and you don't know, the decision's kind of made itself when this falls in your lap. This isn't we just have the number 9 pick. Should we be considering J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix? This isn't the conversation right now. Because I would be pounding the table at keeping him if we didn't have the number 1 pick, right?
Correct.
This fell in your laps and you're still unsure about a guy while supremely talented in like from a raw talent standpoint. You just don't know. And it is what it is. Like, again, it's unfortunate. I'm rooting for him wherever he goes, but yeah, I think anyone who, I would even wager to say if you're rooting for Justin to stay, I think you're silly. I think you're a little too emotional about the process, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree about the weapons thing. Can never have enough. And the Bears don't have enough. We were just kind of looking at their depth chart yesterday, and yeah, a lot of those guys you mentioned had superstars to throw the ball to. And
Aaron Rodgers is one I missed. Fucking phenomenal receiving core.
Yeah. Caleb Williams doesn't have. I think DJ Moore is the closest thing to a superstar. Now, I don't know if a lot of people see him that outside of Chicago, maybe even outside of Carolina. But he's the closest thing to that. But you have to keep adding, and whether that's drafting a wide receiver at 9, whether it's trading up, whether it's drafting Brock Bowers at 9, depending on how you feel about tight ends. Based off of some of the things we saw some guys do last year, Sam Laporta, obviously very, very good rookie season. Maybe there is something there, but yeah, absolutely keep adding. I think it's a no-brainer. Shane Waldron, excited about that hire. He was, I think we did an episode where we talked about potential offensive coordinators, and he was number 1, I believe, for what we were looking for.
All of us. He was number 1 for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely excited to see him get hired. Curious how different the offense will look. Obviously, Seattle used a lot of 3 tight end sets. I know it looks like all of Seattle's tight ends are now gone, now free agents. So maybe the Bears will pick one of those up because I think all they have is Cole Kmet on the roster right now. So they're going to need to add to that position. Not as concerned about. I don't think I was on to talk about the Jackson Smith-Njigba comments that he made about Shane Waldron.
I don't even think we touched on it.
Yeah, just a rookie who was just probably not very happy with how he was utilized.
Wide receiver 3 in a run-happy offense because your quarterback was hurt and then your backup was in who stinks. What are we doing?
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. I think as long as he's average to above average, this offense will look infinitely better than how it has looked in years past.
But it's funny that you said that because in one of the, I'm not sure how often you listen when you're not on, but like that was like my biggest point is the more that I watch offenses and understand what's happening, again, I'm no fucking expert here, but there's really only been like a handful of dudes probably in our life that like really schematically give you an advantage. Kyle Shanahan's one of them. His dad was one of them. Andy Reid. Stefanski, Nagy, I mean, just the greats of the greats.
McVay.
Did
you say Nagy?
Tell you like how I snuck him in there? I don't know if even Stefanski's on that list, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's a short list of guys who like really schematically give you.
He had Joe Flacco.
Come on, cut it out. Joe was fucking ripping it and gripping it, baby. That was all Joe.
That guy A guy died and he wanted.
That is crazy.
From him.
That is fucking crazy from his cold dead hands.
His cloned hands.
Jesus Christ. But no, I think what you really seek in an offensive coordinator is someone who is. It's less about like always schematically giving you an advantage, but it's having an identity. It's out executing people. It's playing to your players' strengths. And that's what's going to get you to average to above average, because not everyone's going to be McVay or even Mike McDaniel or, some of these dudes. And even I know we don't like Josh McDaniels, but as an OC in New England, he did a lot of that as well with the schematics. And his players, always vouch for him for that. So that's all we need. Give me a good scheme that has an identity, that has plays that build off of each other, that have different plays from different sets where it's not predictable. How long have we been asking for this? We just want a watchable, fun, consistent offense. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, and I would argue Seattle has never had anything but an identity to their team, to the point where it was considered such a mistake to have Russell Wilson throw the ball at the 1 yard line. Like, that's what I want. I don't care if it's running the football. I mean, obviously, it's a little bit different when you have Caleb Williams. Like, I just want them to produce points. I don't care about how the statistically it gets done. Of course, I want a 4,000-yard passer because I'm sick of fucking seeing that graphic on every single Sunday night game. But ultimately, I want them to score points, do it consistently, keep the other team from scoring more points than you.
Agreed. I'm when the Caleb Williams draft pick is officially in and we get through all that, the one episode I'm looking forward to the most is what to expect from Caleb Williams in year one, because I don't know. It's not only just his talent. This might be the best situation that a number one pick as a quarterback has ever walked into. Ever. And it's not to say that the Bears are this amazing team, but they just won 7 fucking games. Look at Carolina. Again, we weren't the biggest fans of Bryce Young, but like, look at how much of a fucking that's usually what teams go to. Look what Sam Darnold had to go to with the Jets. I know we don't like Zach Wilson. Look what he went to with the Jets. Look at these teams who get these high draft picks. Like, this is a fucking excellent situation. So that's going to be a fun episode to talk about.
And the biggest difference is they didn't have to trade up to get this pick.
Right.
They still have their own pick. Like, that's the biggest difference. Like, most teams, you think like in the back end, who trade up to the number one pick, like out of the top 5 or top 10, whatever, if they end up trading up super high, they're giving up a ton of assets to do so.
Yep.
It's not the case. And I think that's a big part of why Bears fans are like, please trade back from this pick, because if Caleb Williams is as good as everybody says he is, then they might get even more for that. But my counter to that is, then you're just getting draft picks to get draft picks. At some point, you have to cash those picks in to get the best players. And in my opinion, looking ahead to next year, there is no quarterback even close to Caleb Williams, unless you're a big believer in Shedeur Sanders. And to me, I'm not like there yet. He might be a good. He's more of like a Justin Fields type prospect than Caleb Williams, to be completely honest.
His tape looks a lot like, holding the ball a long time, wanting to make the big plays.
Right. I think there were some other interesting names that got, tagged, and potentially keep in mind. I think that might be worth having an episode just during the offseason while we get a little bit closer to the draft. I do think Nas and I should talk about some landing destinations for Justin Fields that make sense. Hopefully, fingers crossed, doesn't happen before the next podcast. No, I'm happy to be back. Hopefully, we can make this a little bit more consistent. I'd love to talk with Nas, get his thoughts on everything I just said, and how he hates everything, and how he loves mediocrity, and how he just wants to keep being 8-8. He wants to be scrappy. 9-7, 7-9.
That team that you knew you played. You may have beat them, but you knew you played the Chicago Bears.
You played the Bears. You played bear weather. It was black and blue. They may have let you score 65 points, but hey, you ran the ball 25 times.
You're goddamn right. Black and blue division, baby.
No, this is great, Frank. I'm glad to be back. It's nice seeing your face again.
I know, it's nice seeing you.
And if you want to see our faces, we're on YouTube. You can watch this episode on YouTube, or you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever the hell you want to listen to your podcast. We're probably on there, most likely. I would think.
We're everywhere, baby. We're everywhere. Podcasts can be heard.
So I'm assuming that's right. Frank, it was great talking to you again. And, we'll definitely keep up with a lot of the Bears news as it comes. Hopefully we can do an emergency podcast once Justin gets traded. I think that'll be the route to go. Yeah, no, absolutely. That'll be the next emergency podcast that happens. I think, obviously, the Caleb Williams. I mean, big free agent signings maybe as well. I mean, again, for those who aren't familiar, those are quick 10, 15. We're in and out. We just want to get our raw thoughts. Xavier McKinney. Trade for Brian Wilkins. Brian Burns. Chris Jones. What are some other names that Nas hated? Who does Nas not want us to sign? He goes back. He just all he wants is Jimmy G. That's the only thing he wants this offseason. That's it. That's what he keeps talking. We've had to talk him down about how Tyson Bagent isn't going to be good enough. He needs Jimmy G to come in and back him up. Back up Caleb Williams. Yeah. Teach him the ropes of how to be more quarterbacky. His words, not ours. His words, not ours. Weird. His words, not ours. All right, Frankie. This has been the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack. He's Frank. We really do appreciate you guys listening, and we will keep coming at you for the rest of the offseason up to the draft. Later, Jackie. Later, everybody. Everybody love everybody!